You want to know how a locked gate turned into a full-blown neighborhood war? Fine, sit down, because this one starts stupid and ends satisfying, and yeah, you'll probably laugh at part of it and roll your eyes at the rest. But hang on. A locked gate led to police visits, subpoenas of manners, and one woman learning what happens when you try to run a whole street like it's your living room. Long story short, I won. I'm James, by the way. Husband to Lisa, dad to two kids who believe the creek behind our yard is both a trampoline and a portal. And this whole thing began on an ordinary afternoon, when I did something insanely radical. I locked my gate for privacy. Not a wrought iron fortress or anything dramatic, just a 4-foot wooden gate with a latch meant to keep the kids from wandering into the creek while I sipped iced tea on the porch. You know, responsible parenting stuff. Apparently in Cedar Creek Heights, that's a felony. We'd moved into that cul-de-sac because it was calm trees, well-kept lawns, neighbors who waved without interrogating your life choices. Then Karen moved in across the street. Karen and Frank, friendly smile at first, clipboard later. She worked her way onto the HOA board, then into the chair, and suddenly the neighborhood started sounding like a manual read aloud by someone who'd never actually lived in a place with kids. Mailboxes had to be beige, lawns had to be mowed by a certain hour, garbage cans had to be hidden like contraband. I'd trim a bush and get a lecture, not a hey maybe, but a this is what we do. I get rules. But there's a difference between a rule and a hobby horse you ride into everyone else's yard. So I put up the gate. It was practical Kids Creek liability, and I assumed common sense would be on my side. I was wrong. One afternoon, Karen came over, clipboard in hand, smiling like a sun with teeth. "That gate is unsightly," she said, as if she were delivering a weather report. "It violates HOA guidelines." I blinked. It wasn't visible from the street. It didn't block anything. It kept our kids safe. "It stays," I said. "It's legal." Her smile went tight. "You'll have to remove it or face fines." Fine, I thought. That's bureaucratic harassment, but okay, petty fines are a thing. I can fight that. Then her kid Kyle upped the ante, because why wouldn't he? He called 911 for the gate. He told the operator he was being held hostage by a locked latch. 2 patrol cars pulled into my cul-de-sac like they were storming Normandy. The older cop, a man who'd clearly seen more oddities than he wanted to, walked up, turned the latch, and swung the gate open like it was a curtain on a bad play. I laughed. Then small, incredulous breath-out laugh. Because what else do you do when someone calls the police because they can't walk through a private entrance? That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. The HOA wrote me a letter with their logo and clipped tone: remove the gate within 24 hours or face a fine. $50, the symbolic slap of a petty tyrant. We appealed. I told Lisa if I let this slide, she'll keep moving the line. And she did. Grass height fine. Mailbox slightly off-center. Fine. A rake visible in the shed. Fine. Someone was driving past, clipboard glinting in the sun, marking anything that didn't match Karen's vision. It became surveillance, a car idling late at night, corners being noted, neighbors asked to report infractions. It felt less like community management and more like vindictive micromanagement. I wasn't the drama type, I had a job, kids' life, but this gnawed at me. One night, tired of passive aggression by certified letter, I started documenting everything. Photos, dates, copies of the HOA bylaws, timestamps, videos. I recorded the gate, measured the height, compared the materials to the HOA list. And I found something beautiful. The rules didn't actually support Karen's attacks. The gate was legal under the height limits, made from allowed materials, not obstructing anything. The fines were procedural theater. The board had to follow rules they weren't following. That was the twist. And it's one I didn't see coming, at least not from the people who would help me. I called a lawyer, Gary Miller, a practical guy who, when I laid everything out, didn't roll his eyes at me for standing up to a clipboard-wielding tyrant. He said what I'd started to suspect: you don't have to take this. The HOA has power, but not infinite power, and selective enforcement is a problem we can expose. That gave me a strategy, a way to turn the petty harassment into demonstrable pattern and proof. Preparing to fight was tedious and oddly satisfying. Organizing fines, the patrol logs, correspondence. I started showing the documentation to neighbors, and something shifted. People who'd smiled politely at Karen's comments in the past now stopped me in the cul-de-sac and said, "You're not the only one." A few admitted they'd filed quiet complaints in their heads for months. The tiniest rebellion, a shared eye roll across lawn chairs, turned into a small coalition. The actual showdown came at the HOA meeting. Picture this, a community center with folding chairs, the board at a long table, Karen at the head, looking like someone about to read the verdict on a reality show. I stood up, folder in hand, and I told the truth. I said the gate was legal, I said the fines were arbitrary, and I said she had weaponized the HOA for personal preference. You could hear a pin drop. Not because my voice was loud, but because the facts have that particular silence, the one that strips away performance. Her defensiveness cracked. She called it protecting the integrity of the neighborhood, which, if you've ever heard that phrase delivered by someone whose definition of integrity starts and ends with their own taste in paint, you know how hollow it sounds? Mr. Turner, an older board member who seemed to remember that HOA stands for homeowners, not one person's art project, cleared his throat and said plainly, "We need to follow our own bylaws." They read the documents. One by one, people who had been cowed by Karen's posture realized the posture was empty. We won the vote that night. The board dropped the fines, acknowledged the improper procedure, and the room, which had been thick with tension, exhaled. Karen's authority evaporated in real time. There wasn't a dramatic mic drop. There was a small, humiliating shuffling as her allies started to look for other things to do. Within weeks, she was out as president. People who'd once nodded at her comments stopped answering her calls. The surveillance car vanished. The letters stopped. The HOA returned to a group of neighbors making small, ordinary decisions, mostly about mulch. You'd think that would be the end. You'd think the real victory was legal. It wasn't just legal, it was moral. The real win was reclaiming the right to live without being policed for choosing how to keep our kids safe, to sit on a porch without expecting a clipboard to appear like a literal boogeyman. When the board sided with me, it sent a message: you can't hide behind rules to bully people. Power without accountability corrupts even a place as small as a cul-de-sac. There's a lesson tucked under all of this. Rules are necessary, but so is proportionality and basic empathy. If you're the sort of person who gets off on telling people how to live, especially when it makes their lives harder and yours only marginally neater, you'll eventually meet someone who documents, speaks up, and refuses to be gaslit. Standing up felt scary. It felt like drawing a line in your own yard. But if you don't draw that line, you'll wake up one day with someone else's aesthetic dictating your life. We got our peace back. The kids still run to the creek under watchful eyes, the dogs chase each other, and Lisa and I can finally enjoy our porch without checking for tail lights in the cul-de-sac. Karen still lives across the street. She's still human, and that's the thing, sometimes people get lost in the role they've carved out for themselves. For her, that role was power with no oversight, and losing it humbled her. She's quieter now. She's still there, making her grocery runs and occasionally watering a plant. The neighborhood breathes easier. So what do you do if this happens to you? Document everything. Know your bylaws. Be calm but firm. Get a lawyer if it crosses into harassment. Tell your story to the board with evidence and bring neighbors into the conversation. There's safety in numbers. And remember, winning is often less about a courtroom and more about people seeing the truth and having the courage to say, that's not how we do things here. Before I forget, here's the part I like best: that gate. It's still there, it's weathered, it's got a few scratches from kids and time, and it's a tiny monument to the principle that your home is yours. The HOA formally dropped everything. The police visits dwindled to zero. And for a while, whenever I passed Karen, she gave me a small nod. Not a confrontation, not a smile, just a neighborly nod that said we survived. That felt like justice, quiet, uneventful, and absolute. Tell me, have you ever had someone weaponize rules to bully you? Do you think HOAs are necessary, or do they invite exactly the sort of petty tyranny I just described? Drop your story or thoughts below. Tell me what you'd do in my shoes. Or tell me about the time you stood up and what happened. I want to hear it because, if nothing else, this neighborhood taught me that speaking up matters, and your story might be the thing that helps someone else lock their gate in peace.